Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.
Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council, Matthew Dickerson, how are you today?
Well, it's a bit chilly today. What's happened? It's dropped back to 10 or 12 degrees this morning, so it's all over the place, this weather at the moment, Rod. I don't know what's going on.
It's back to spring, which is nice.
I think we skipped spring, you're right. Well, you skipped spring, went straight to summer, now we've come back to spring, so it is all over the shop.
It is all over the place. Now, what's this? You've got Angel Flight having a raffle.
A raffle with a difference. They're trying to raise some extra money, and Angel Flight do some wonderful work. Lots of people in our region use Angel Flight. It's used for non-emergency flights to transfer people typically to Sydney to have ongoing treatments. And for some people, getting to Sydney either time-wise or money-wise is very difficult. So Angel Flight has volunteer pilots. They volunteer their planes. The only thing they get paid for is their fuel, which is fair enough because it's pretty expensive. So they do some wonderful work, but they've got to raise money. So they've got a raffle together, and this is enough. I don't normally buy tickets in a raffle, Rod, but this is enough to get me interested in buying a ticket. You can win a Robinson R44 Raven 2 helicopter. And if you're worried that you can't fly a helicopter, well, it comes with $70,000 of pilot training, $100,000 of fuel, all insurance expenses, which I can't imagine that's cheap for the first year, or maintenance and hangarage for the first year. So you've got yourself pretty well covered.
All right, so obviously you just go to Angel Flight's website and there'll be details there.
Exactly right. Go there and have a look at it. And if you can support Angel Flight in any way, I think it's worthwhile. They do some great work around our region.
Wouldn't mind the prize myself. It'd make my trip down to Dubbo very much easier.
It would, wouldn't it?
I quite often consider changing jobs as well. Some of the incentives are being flown around the place for people like teachers. It's a very enticing sort of package.
It is. It's really interesting. And there's a couple of different programs they've got at the moment. And I'm not convinced they're the best way to go forward, although I don't mind one of them. The first program is anywhere between $20,000 and $30,000 for a teacher already teaching typically in a metro area to move to certain rural or remote schools, and depending where you go to is how much you get. So, for example, if you move from Sydney to Dubbo, you get a $25,000 payment. You've only got to stay for 1 year. And obviously there are teacher shortages in regional areas, and I would say that let's look at why there are teacher shortages. Are there other root causes of the problem rather than just throwing a chunk of change at the problem? And for a year, I'm sure there are people in Sydney now who will say, well, I'll go to Dubbo for a year, can't be that bad, and then I'll just come back after that first year. If it was a bit longer than a year, I think you'd have more of a chance of holding on to them. But people for a year probably won't walk away from their other life. They'll probably stay connected there, and you'll only have them for a short period of time and then they'll go back. The second program, though, I do think is a bit better. It's a bit like an old scholarship program that we used to see back when you and I were at school, Rod. You can get $30,000 training allowance. There's an undergraduate pathway, so you get $30,000 over 4 years. There's a postgraduate pathway with $30,000 training over 2 years, or the industry experience pathway. And I'm not quite sure if this one is exactly right, but it says a $30,000 training allowance over 2 years, and then a retention incentive of up to $30,000 paid over the first 3 years of teaching. So I don't quite understand whether that means you get paid two lots of $30,000 or it's encompassed into one. But the idea of having that scholarship, especially if you're a person at school just about to do or actually doing your HSC right now, and you're not sure where to go, and you mightn't be able to go to university, you might be able to afford it, for example, but then suddenly you've got $30,000 and you've thought about being a teacher. I don't mind that one in particular, but the first one, I think the state government's just throwing away money. Look at all the people that are already teaching those locations. I think they would feel a bit hard done by that. They're already there teaching, and yet someone coming in new is going to be paid $25,000 or $30,000 just to come and start teaching in that same school.
And while we're speaking of money, the A-League's Wanderers are wanting to talk to you about coming to Dubbo.
Absolutely right. The Sydney Wanderers, the Western Sydney Wanderers, have had a discussion. I had a good discussion with the CEO. They've had some discussions with our staff about bringing out an A-League women's match to Dubbo, which I think would be fantastic. On the back of the Matildas, obviously people are very excited about female soccer, which is great. But unfortunately, it's still a similar situation that we see with the NRL. The NRL, when we had South Sydney in Dubbo for a couple of years, The standard fee for South Sydney is $350,000 per game to bring a game to regional areas, which I get a bit frustrated about because I think the NRL should be trying to grow the game in regional areas, and we provide lots of players for the NRL. There was a confidential conversation, so I can't say the amount that was being discussed with the Western Sydney Wanderers at this stage, but certainly they have that same expectation that they'll be paid a chunk of change to come along and play a game in a regional area. And I just don't think that's right to do that. But I'd love to have them out here. So we're talking about how we might be able to make it happen for them. They can get paid their money in the way they want to get paid their money, and we can have a game without it costing ratepayers money. But I think it would be good, and there's so many kids that play soccer, it'd be good to have that exposure to soccer at the highest level being played out here in Dubbo.
Yeah, maybe need to find a third group to come in and pay for it and have the naming rights and that sort of thing.
Well, that's one of the possibilities, having sponsors come along. When you do the ticket sales, often they'll say, well, you pay an amount for us to come out and you keep the ticket sales. But I'd say, well, you keep the ticket sales and come out and don't charge us. So there's a variety of different models out there. I just like to see a model where it's not costing us. And if it's a sponsor that pays for it all, then that's okay as well.
We're speaking with Matthew Dickerson, Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council, the capital of the West, and there's a new visitor guide out.
New visitor guide. It'll be delivered to every household in the Dubbo Regional Council LGA. It'll be at the Visitor Information Centre in Dubbo. If you're coming through Dubbo, pick up a copy. It's a great way to just have a look at what's in the region, not just Dubbo. We do focus on the region as well, but a great way to try and keep people in Dubbo a bit longer. Now, we did launch that last week, and at the launch I talked about some of the data, some of the latest data from our visitation process, and it's actually quite impressive at the moment. 1.259 million visitors we had last year. $380 million was injected into the economy. Now, we are recovering from COVID, obviously, so you'd expect the numbers to go up, but our day tripper numbers went up by 104%. Overnight visitors went up, and this is year on year, went up by 54%. And the expenditure went up by 30%. So they're all fantastic numbers. One of the things I'd like to see keep increasing, and it has increased a fair bit since I started as mayor, and I remember that was a focus back then, back in 2011. At the moment, our average night stay for a visitor is 2.2. Now, once we've got them here, Rod, if we can keep them here a bit longer, then obviously that injects a lot more money into our economy. It's easier to keep those people than to try and get new people. So if we can get that number up from 2.2, keep pushing it up to 2.5, maybe even as far as 3, that will make a big change to our economic injection from our tourism process. So it's looking good at the moment. The Visitors Guide is a comprehensive guide. That'll last us for 18 months. 107 of our businesses in Dubbo sponsored that, so it didn't actually cost the ratepayer any money in Dubbo. So really positive for tourism in Dubbo. And if it's positive for tourism in Dubbo, it's positive in the region.
And the Rhino Awards recently delivered?
Absolutely right. Friday night, congratulations to Summit Cranes. They won the big rhino, the gold rhino, but 20 awards were handed out on the night, 97 entries they received. It's a showing of our strength in our business community, just the businesses there. And when you saw the finalists come up on screen before the winner was announced, just about in every category, I looked at that and went, wow, all of those businesses are good. There's typically 4 finalists in each category. You go, wow, I wonder which one of those businesses will win this one because, gee, they're all good businesses. So I sat back and thought about it during the night. I went, wow, we do really have some exceptional businesses here in Dubbo. And they came through COVID with flying colours. Some people came up with some very innovative ways to solve problems during COVID and to keep their business running. We had Mark Beretta from Sunrise. He was the MC, and the Dubbo Business Chamber does an excellent job with the Rhinos, and they typically do an excellent job with the hosts that they have, and they didn't disappoint on Friday night.
Well done on all the winners and all those who were nominated. It's a remarkable community that is continuing to go from strength to strength, Dubbo. Yeah,
indeed, you're right. And it does feel like that when you walk around and talk to people, even at the Rhino Awards on Friday night, just talking to businesses. There is that strength, that feeling of strength, that feeling of confidence in the economy. And certainly lots of things are happening that are good, but our renewable energy zone is certainly helping foster that strength, that growth. It does make it a bit harder for some people to keep their employees because there's a lot of pressure on more employees needed in Dubbo at the moment, and that's a good problem to have because it means we're trying to attract more people to Dubbo.
And you mentioned the Rana Res, how that has received funding?
That's received some funding from a slightly different source. We know that money will come in from the various proponents. There are 37 projects that are proposed or under construction or happening in the Central West Arana Renewable Energy Zone, and that covers Mid-Western Regional Council, Warrumbungle Shire Council and Dubbo Regional Council. And so some of that money is coming in. We've got the Badengra Wind Farm, we get the Community Benefits Fund. You've also got Energy Co, who are building the transmission line, so more money will flow to the region from that. But the large amounts haven't started flowing yet, and the state government felt that that was the case. So on Friday, Penny Sharp, who's the Minister for a range of things, but including climate change and energy, and she made an announcement that there was $128 million, which is a large amount of money, so that's $128 million. That's available for those three areas, for Warrumbungle, for Mid-Western and for Dubbo, to spend over the next 4 years for a variety of projects, public infrastructure projects, for example, that'll help in basically getting us ready, our whole region ready, and basically putting some money on the ground before some of those projects get fully into the swing of the RES. And this is really a down payment on what will be coming from the RES. It's a good way for the government to show that this is happening, this is definitely happening. I spoke to Penny on Friday when she was in Dubbo, and she did make the point that the Central West Arana RES is the first RES. They need to get this one right. There are 4 other RESs after this one. But once we finish this RES, Rod, this RES will be providing 42% of all the power needed in the state. So that's pretty impressive. So I think it's fair and reasonable that the community gets some financial benefits from providing all that power for the rest of the state.
It's going to be good. Now, speaking of, this is getting good out of bad. There was to be an exhibited gifted to Golgong, but that's not going ahead, and you might be able to pick it up for Dubbo.
Well, it is an interesting process. It's a disappointing process, there's no doubt about it, for Golgong. And I heard it on the news, and I was aware of this fossil exhibition that was going to go over to Golgong. I heard on the news that it had been pulled, basically. There was I suppose, call it a bullying campaign, an online trolling campaign that was against the actual exhibition. There were a small number of people who were against it in Golgong. They received $3 million from the state government. They had $1 million from the council. They were talking to the federal government about another $3 million. So a $7 million project built into the side of Red Hill. It would have really added to the tourism for Golgong. But I thought, well, I wonder if there's an opportunity there to tie in this fossil exhibition to the Wellington Cave. So I spoke to Mudgee and just found out the details about exactly what had happened there. And I actually said to the general manager of Mudgee, is it okay? Do you mind if I speak to Michael Durant, the person who was going to donate this incomplete exhibition? And I thought it was just courtesy to have that conversation with Brad, because I didn't want to feel like I was suddenly jumping on the bad news for Mudgee. But he said that it's definitely gone, it's finished, it's not going to go ahead, and he was very disappointed about that. So I spoke to Michael Durant, and he was very excited that someone else was interested. And funnily enough, many years ago, he did have a small exhibition at the Wellington Cave, so he's very familiar with Wellington Caves, and very excited that someone else might be able to take over his 15,000 fossils, his life's work, and put it in an exhibition. And he really wants to leave something here for all the work that he's done. So nothing concrete's happened out of that yet. All it is has been an initial discussion. I'll then share that with my fellow councillors and talk to staff about how we might make this come to fruition. And essentially we'll see if we can work with something here and get something for the region still.
Sounds like a good plan. Good to talk with you this morning.
Always my pleasure. Thank you very much, Rod.
Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.